All right. Ready to dive deep into Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now?
Let's do it.
We're going straight to the source this time, working with excerpts from the book itself. No skimming allowed.
Sounds intense.
Oh, it is. This is a big one, a guide to spiritual enlightenment and no shortcuts.
So, cutting to the chase, what's the core idea here?
Basically, Tolle's all about escaping what he calls the tyranny of our own minds to find true peace right here and now in the present moment.
Sounds a bit like mindfulness, but with a spiritual twist.
Exactly. And he goes all in on this idea that identifying with our constantly thinking mind, that back and forth between past regrets and future worries, is the root of human suffering.
Makes you think, doesn't it?
It really does. It's so true, though, isn't it? I catch myself doing that all the time. Even when things are good, there's this underlying anxiety or this feeling that I should be doing more, achieving more. And that story just keeps playing in the background, keeping me from fully appreciating what's right in front of me.
Exactly. And that's where the ego comes in.
The ego.
Yeah, Tolle describes the ego as this mental construct that feeds off that feeling of lack, that constant striving for something outside ourselves to make us feel complete.
So the ego is the one behind all this mental chatter.
Precisely. It's the one whispering in our ear, you're not good enough, not successful enough, not happy enough, always pushing us to chase external things like possessions, achievements, status, even relationships.
It's like we're on this endless treadmill, always striving, but never truly arriving.
Exactly. And Tolle argues that this striving actually prevents us from experiencing the very thing it claims to be seeking, true happiness and fulfillment.
It's like that analogy he uses of the beggar sitting on a box of gold.
Oh, that's a good one.
Right. We're all carrying around this incredible treasure inside us, true joy, peace, enlightenment, but we're so fixated on those external things that we completely miss it.
Brilliant analogy. It really highlights how the ego's constant striving actually prevents us from experiencing true happiness.
Okay, so we need to break free from this egoic grip, this mental chatter that keeps us trapped in this cycle of suffering. But how? We can't just switch off our minds.
Well, Tolle says awareness is the first step. It's about noticing those thoughts as they arise, without judgment, just observing that constant stream of commentary and stories the mind creates. He calls this watching the thinker.
Watching the thinker. I like that. I've tried meditation a bit, and I find that when I can just observe those thoughts without getting carried away by them, there's this sense of space, of peace inside.
Exactly. And the more we do this, the more we see that we're not our thoughts. There's a deeper dimension to us, a deeper you, beyond that mental noise.
It's like realizing the sky is not the clouds. The clouds come and go, but the sky is always there, vast and unchanging.
Beautiful analogy. And that sky, that deeper dimension, is where true peace and freedom reside.
So awareness is the first step. What else helps us break free from this ego and tap into that deeper dimension?
Well, Tolle suggests focusing on the inner body. It's about shifting our attention from the mind, with all its noise, to the physical sensations within the body.
So instead of getting caught up in thought, we bring our attention to things like our breath, the feeling of our feet on the ground, just the sensations of our body as we move through the world.
Exactly. And he suggests this simple shift can have a profound impact on our state of mind.
I can see that. When I'm stressed or anxious, I realize I'm totally disconnected from my body. My mind's racing, but my body feels numb.
Right. And that's how the ego wants it to keep us trapped in our heads, disconnected from the present moment.
So by focusing on the body, we're basically grounding ourselves in the now.
Precisely. And this grounding can help dissolve that fear, anxiety, and restlessness that the egoic mind feeds on.
Okay, so we have awareness and focusing on the body. What else?
He also talks about something called the pain body, which is basically all this accumulated negative energy from past experiences that gets stored in our bodies.
It's not just our thoughts creating suffering, but this emotional baggage we carry around.
Exactly. And Tolle says this pain body shows up in all sorts of ways, from chronic pain to emotional outbursts, negativity, even addictions.
That makes sense. I've noticed when I'm stressed, I'm way more reactive, easily triggered.
That's the pain body trying to keep itself going by drawing us into those negative states.
So how do we break free from this cycle? Just ignore the pain body, push it down.
No, repression doesn't work. Tolle says the key is conscious awareness. To feel it fully without judgment, just allow it to be there.
So face the darkness instead of running from it. Acknowledge the pain without identifying with it.
Exactly. He even suggests this conscious awareness can transform the pain body, turning that negative energy into something positive and life-affirming.
Not just getting rid of it, but using it as fuel for our growth.
That's it. He even goes as far as to say the pain body can be a portal to deeper consciousness, a deeper understanding of ourselves and reality.
Fascinating. It's like our wounds can become our teachers. But I have to ask, what about Tolle himself? How did he come to these realizations? What was his journey like?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting. In the book's intro, he shares his personal story, which is pretty remarkable.
I've heard bits and pieces. Tell me more.
He struggled for years with severe anxiety and depression. He describes feeling like a prisoner in his own mind, constantly tormented by negative thoughts and emotions.
Wow, that sounds incredibly painful.
It was. It all came to a head when he was 29. He was in so much pain he even thought about suicide.
Must have been a dark time.
It was. But in that darkness, something profound happened. He woke up one night with this overwhelming sense of dread, a familiar feeling. But this time, something was different.
What happened?
He describes hearing a voice inside asking, "What's the point of living with this misery?" And suddenly, something shifted. He couldn't answer that question anymore. He reached complete surrender.
He surrendered to the pain, the darkness.
Exactly. And in that surrender, something extraordinary happened. His mind went completely still. He describes it as a collapse, an egoic death.
Whoa, he literally experienced the death of his ego.
You could say that. And from that collapse emerged a profound peace, a joy he'd never felt before. He describes it as intense presence, complete connection to the present moment.
Like all that mental noise, all the suffering just vanished.
Exactly. And that experience was so profound that it transformed his life. It became the basis for his teachings and ultimately led to writing The Power of Now.
That's an amazing story. It speaks to the power of surrender, of letting go and allowing ourselves to be fully present.
And it highlights how awakening can happen in the most unexpected ways. It doesn't have to be years of meditation or complicated practices. It can be an instant shift in consciousness.
So inspiring. It gives me hope that true peace and freedom are possible for all of us, regardless of our past or current circumstances.
And that's Tolle's message, that the power to transform our lives is always available right here, right now, in this present moment.
Okay, so we've talked about his personal journey. Are there any other examples or anecdotes from the book that you think would be helpful in illustrating these concepts?
Well, he uses stories about Zen masters a lot to illustrate the power of presence. The Zen tradition, as you know, really emphasizes being fully present in each moment. Tolle draws on that wisdom in his teachings.
Oh, I love Zen stories. They're always so insightful, but often with a touch of humor that makes them even more profound.
Absolutely. One of my favorites that he shares is about a master who is asked about enlightenment. His response, chop wood, carry water.
Chop wood, carry water. Sounds pretty simple. What's the deeper meaning there?
It's about bringing full presence and awareness to even the most ordinary tasks.
Finding the sacred in the everyday.
Exactly. Recognizing that every moment is an opportunity for awakening.
It reminds me of that Thich Nhat Hanh quote, "Walk as if you are kissing the earth with your feet."
Beautiful. And Tolle emphasizes that this kind of presence is the key to unlocking true peace and joy.
Okay, so even chopping wood can be a spiritual practice with the right awareness. Any other examples?
He also uses the example of listening, not just listening with the mind, but with your whole being, to really connect with others.
We often take listening for granted. We're so busy planning our responses in our heads that we don't truly hear what the other person is saying.
Right, and that prevents genuine connection. It's only when we quiet our minds and listen with our whole being that we can truly understand and empathize.
That kind of listening could deepen relationships, create a deeper sense of connection.
He even suggests it can be a spiritual practice in itself, a way of connecting with the divine essence in each of us.
That's beautiful, seeing the other person as an extension of ourselves, as a reflection of the divine.
And that recognition, he suggests, can dissolve those barriers we often create between ourselves and others, leading to greater understanding, compassion, and love.
This is all so inspiring. Okay, so we've talked about awareness, focusing on the body, the pain body, self-compassion, his journey, and the transformative power of presence in everyday activities and relationships. Anything else you think our listeners would find helpful or thought-provoking?
One thing that really jumps out is his discussion of time. He suggests that time, as we experience it, is an illusion created by the mind.
Now we're getting deep. What do you mean?
He argues that the past and future are just thought forms, mental constructs that only exist in our minds. The only reality is the present moment.
So we're always living in these mental projections instead of inhabiting the present moment.
Exactly, and that preoccupation with past and future is a major source of human suffering.
We're missing out on the richness of the present moment, the only place where life is actually happening.
And that's where the power of now comes in. It's about reclaiming our power by shifting our attention away from those mental constructs and grounding ourselves in the present moment.
Breaking free from the mind and experiencing the freedom and joy of being fully present, right here, right now.
He even says that when we dissolve those mental constructs of time, when we become fully present, we tap into a timeless dimension of being. And that's where true peace, joy, and enlightenment reside.
Okay, I admit that's pretty radical. It's like
Yeah.
challenging the very fabric of our reality.
It is radical, but think about it. We spend so much time dwelling on the past, regretting things, or worrying about the future, anticipating problems. None of that's actually happening in this present moment.
Always trying to get somewhere else, but never fully arriving.
He compares it to the sun, moon, and the present moment. He suggests the past and future are like reflections, the moon reflecting the sun's light, while the present moment is the actual source of light, the sun itself.
So we're focusing on faint reflections instead of basking in the brilliance of the sun, which is the present moment.
Exactly. And when we realize that the past and future are just mental constructs, we can start to loosen their grip and shift our attention to the only reality that truly matters, the present moment.
But letting go of time, especially the practical aspects of time, how do we function? Plan for the future, remember appointments, if we're not supposed to use our minds that way.
He addresses that. He distinguishes between what he calls clock time and psychological time. Clock time is needed for practical things, but psychological time is what the ego uses to create suffering.
So not rejecting time altogether, but recognizing the difference between using time as a tool and getting lost in those mental traps.
Right. He even encourages us to bring that same presence and awareness to our use of clock time. So instead of mindlessly rushing through a to-do list, we bring full attention to each task and find deeper meaning in those actions.
Bringing presence into every aspect of our lives, not just compartmentalizing it for meditation.
Exactly. He suggests that this integration is key to not only personal transformation, but also to creating a more conscious and enlightened world.
I love how he connects personal and global transformation. He's offering a path not just for individual enlightenment, but for shifting the collective consciousness of humanity.
He calls it a quantum leap in the evolution of consciousness, a shift from egoic separation to a state of unity consciousness.
Wow, ordinary unconsciousness.
Yeah.
So how do we dissolve it?
He describes ordinary consciousness as being lost in thought, disconnected from the present moment, and driven by the ego. It's like a constant background static of negativity and judgment.
It's like we're sleepwalking through life, not fully awake.
Exactly. And dissolving it starts with simply becoming aware of it. Notice when you're pulled into negativity or thought patterns that cause suffering.
Shining a light on the darkness.
Exactly. And what emerges is presence, that stillness, that awareness, always available beneath the noise.
Sounds gradual. We don't suddenly become enlightened beings free from negativity.
He compares it to growing a plant. It takes time and nourishment for a plant to thrive, and it takes time and practice to cultivate presence and dissolve unconsciousness.
So the more we do it, the stronger we become, less susceptible to negativity.
Exactly. And as we grow, we become less reactive to outside circumstances. We develop an inner strength and stability that allows us to navigate life with more grace.
It's like building a foundation of inner peace that can't be shaken. But what about when we do get triggered? When something happens and we feel that surge of negativity?
That's when the real work begins. Instead of fighting those feelings, Tolle says to bring conscious awareness to them.
So pause, turn inward, and get curious about what's happening inside instead of getting swept away by the reaction.
Precisely. Observe the thoughts, emotions, and sensations without judgment. He suggests asking, what's going on inside me at this moment?
Such a simple but powerful question brings us right back to the present moment.
Exactly. When we ask that honestly, we become aware of any tension or resistance within us. And that awareness is the first step in dissolving that ordinary unconsciousness.
Becoming a scientist of our own inner world, observing without judgment.
And in that observation, we discover that we are not those thoughts or emotions. There's a deeper you, a deeper dimension of being that is pure awareness.
Like the difference between the ocean and the waves. Waves crash and churn, but the ocean itself is vast and still.
Beautiful analogy. Tully suggests that connecting with this deeper dimension allows us to access a level of peace that's unshakable, no matter what's happening externally.
Okay, this is inspiring, but how does this work in daily life? We can't just meditate all day. We have jobs, relationships, responsibilities.
Tully isn't saying to abandon responsibilities or become hermits. He suggests bringing presence to everything we do.
So instead of going through the motions mindlessly, we bring full attention to whatever we're doing, whether it's washing dishes or working on a project.
Exactly. And that infuses those activities with meaning and purpose. We connect with the present moment and we find joy and fulfillment even in the simplest things.
It's like reclaiming the sacred in the ordinary, finding that spark of divinity in the everyday.
And that's the essence of spiritual practice. It's not escaping the world, but bringing that light of awareness into every aspect of our lives.
I like this idea of everyday activities as spiritual practices. How can we do that?
Instead of viewing work, relationships, or even challenges as obstacles, we can see them as opportunities for growth and awakening. Shift your focus from the outcome to the process, from the future goal to the present moment experience.
Being fully present in each moment and letting that presence transform our experience.
Exactly. And that connects us to the flow of life, and we find ease and effortless action.
It's like surrendering to the wisdom of life itself.
It's letting go of that ego's need to control and allowing ourselves to be guided by a deeper intelligence.
This is inspiring, but is this detachment really possible in the face of life's challenges? When things go wrong, when there's loss, heartbreak, disappointment, can we really be at peace?
That's where the true power of surrender comes in. Tolle says lasting peace comes from embracing all of life, not just the good parts.
So letting go of resistance to what is, even when it's painful or difficult. Accepting the present moment without judgment and allowing ourselves to feel everything.
Exactly. And he's not saying to become passive or give up on taking action. It's about taking action from a place of awareness, not from fear or reactivity.
We're not suppressing emotions or pretending everything's okay when it's not. We're allowing ourselves to feel the full range of human experience, but doing so from a place of presence and acceptance.
Precisely. And that acceptance is the key to transforming suffering into peace.
Surrender seems central to his teachings. Letting go of the ego's control, resisting the flow of life, accepting the present moment unconditionally. How do we actually practice that in daily life? It seems pretty abstract.
He has a few practical suggestions. One is simply to become aware of the resistance. He says to notice how it happens, how the mind labels situations and people.
So paying attention to those voices of judgment or complaint that pop up when we don't like something.
Exactly. And once you're aware of that resistance, you can start to disengage from it. Observe the thought process, feel the energy of it, and recognize that you are not the resistance, but the awareness observing it.
It's about bringing awareness to the energy of resistance, not getting caught in the thoughts themselves.
Right. And the more we practice this, the more we can detach from the resistance. We realize we are not our thoughts or emotions and find that stillness within.
Creating a space between ourselves and the mind.
And in that space, we can access the power of the present moment.
Exactly.
The more we do this, the more we realize we have a choice in how we respond to life. We can react unconsciously from ego and resistance, or respond consciously from presence and surrender.
And that choice is the key to transforming our experience of life.
Tolle says surrender is the only way to true freedom.
Wow, that's a big statement. What does he mean by true freedom?
He means freedom from suffering, freedom from the ego's control, freedom from the limitations of the mind. It's a state of being where we're no longer defined by our thoughts, emotions, or circumstances. It's about inner peace and joy that's unshakable no matter what's happening.
Stepping out of the prison of our own minds into a vast open space.
Exactly. And it's always available to us, right here, right now, in this present moment.
This is all so profound, but before we get ahead of ourselves, let's talk about how this surrender plays out in our relationships with others. Doesn't surrendering mean letting people walk all over us?
That's a common misconception. He's not suggesting we become doormats. He's talking about a surrender that comes from strength and awareness, not weakness.
Not giving up our power, but aligning with a deeper power.
Exactly. He describes it as surrendering to the love that's already present within us, a love that's unconditional.
It's like tapping into a source of love that doesn't depend on what's happening around us.
And when we connect with this love, we naturally become more compassionate, understanding, and forgiving towards ourselves and others.
This is beautiful. Shifting from fear and lack to abundance and love.
And that shift can transform relationships from sources of pain to sources of joy.
Okay, so surrender to the present moment, to the love within, and to the challenges and opportunities in relationships. But what about those really tough situations, like when someone's trying to manipulate us? Do we just let them?
That's a great question. He's not saying to be passive or allow ourselves to be mistreated. He's talking about surrender from a place of clarity and strength.
So it's about discerning the difference between true surrender and giving up.
Exactly. And he even suggests that true surrender can be a powerful way to protect ourselves from manipulation.
Okay, now I'm intrigued. How can surrendering protect us?
When we surrender to the present moment, we detach from the need to defend ourselves, to resist or retaliate. We create inner peace that's unshakable, regardless of what someone else is doing.
Like we're taking away their power by refusing to play their game.
Precisely. He suggests that this can even disarm a manipulator because they're not getting the reaction they want.
It's like creating a force field of consciousness.
Love that analogy. He even talks about how this non-resistance can sometimes lead to a miraculous transformation in the other person.
Powerful. So by surrendering, we not only find peace, but also create possibilities for transformation in our relationship.
Exactly. And this transformation can happen on both an individual and a collective level.
Tying back to the idea that personal transformation is connected to global transformation.
He describes it as a quantum leap in the evolution of consciousness, a shift from ego to unity consciousness.
Okay, now we're getting into some really deep territory. What does he mean by unity consciousness?
Well, he suggests it's a state of being where we no longer experience ourselves as separate from others or the world. It's oneness, interconnectedness, recognizing that we are all part of the same divine essence.
Dropping the illusion of separation, recognizing that we're all connected.
Exactly. And he believes this shift is crucial for humanity's survival.
This is all so fascinating, but we're going to have to pause here. Join us in part 2 as we continue to explore the power of now. We'll be discussing the role of the body in spiritual awakening, enlightened relationships, and so much more.
Back again for more of the power of now. One thing that stood out to me rereading these excerpts is how Toye brings the body into this whole idea of spiritual awakening. It's not just all in our heads, is it?
Definitely not. We've been focusing on escaping the mind's grip, but I'm curious about the body's role in all this.
He calls it the inner body, this energy field, this aliveness that animates our physical form. It's like a bridge between the physical and the spiritual.
So not just carrying that pain body of emotional baggage, but also holding a key to a deeper presence.
Exactly. It's about shifting our attention from that mental chatter to the actual sensations in the body. Feeling the breath, the heartbeat, the subtle energy flowing through us, that's how we connect with being, as Tolle calls it.
You know, it makes me realize how much I go through the day disconnected from my body, lost in thought, rushing around, barely noticing how I feel physically.
And the ego loves that. Disconnected from the body, lost in thought, that's its playground.
Makes sense.
But when we bring our attention into the body, we ground ourselves in the present moment. And that's what the ego fears.
That's like cutting off its power source.
Exactly. Try this. Close your eyes, direct your attention inward. Can you feel that life pulsing through your hands, your arms, your legs, that aliveness in your chest, your belly? That's the inner body, the doorway to the unmanifested.
Okay, I'll admit, when you say unmanifested, my mind starts to wander.
It's a big concept, right? Think of it this way. The unmanifested is pure consciousness, the source of everything. It's beyond form, beyond time, beyond the limitations of the mind.
Tapping into something larger than ourselves, something connecting us to all of creation.
Exactly. And the inner body, that felt sense of aliveness, is the portal to that realm. It's how we access that deeper reality that's always present just beneath the surface.
Almost like remembering something we've forgotten, like coming home after a long journey.
Beautiful. And that's what Tolle connects to enlightenment.
Ah, enlightenment. That state so many spiritual seekers are after. But you're saying it's not about achieving something new, but remembering something we already are.
Precisely. Tolle says enlightenment is not a distant goal, but our true nature, just veiled by the mind's identification with form, with thoughts and stories that make us feel separate and incomplete.
So we're already enlightened, just don't realize it.
He uses the analogy of the sun being blocked by clouds. The sun's always shining, but sometimes clouds obscure our view. Our true nature, our enlightened essence, is always there, but often obscured by the clouds of the mind.
So the practice is about clearing away those clouds, dissolving the illusion of separation, and recognizing our inherent wholeness.
Right, and that's where the power of now comes in. Shifting to the present moment, connecting with the inner body, surrendering to what is, that's how we dissolve those mental constructs and awaken to who we really are.
This is all very profound. But if enlightenment is something we already are, why is it so hard to experience? Why do we create so much suffering if our true nature is peace and love?
That's the age-old question, isn't it? Tolle suggests it's simply the mind's nature to create a sense of self that's separate from the divine. It's how the ego survives to convince us we're separate, limited, incomplete.
Our minds are wired for separation, for duality.
Exactly. And that illusion of separation is the root of all suffering. It creates fear, conflict, and the need to control. It traps us in a cycle of pain and pleasure, always seeking something outside ourselves to make us happy.
So the key is to break free from that mental conditioning, to realize that we're not separate, but already one with the divine.
And that's where those practices we've been talking about come in, watching the thinker, focusing on the inner body, surrendering. They help us dissolve that illusion and reconnect with our true nature.
This is inspiring, but sometimes it feels overwhelming. How do we actually live in the world while cultivating this level of awareness? Seems like a lot.
Tolle's not advocating for abandoning our lives or becoming detached hermits. He's suggesting we bring that same presence to everything we do.
Integrating it into every aspect of life, not just during meditation.
Right. And the more we practice, the easier it becomes. Like building a muscle at first, it takes effort, but over time it becomes second nature.
Developing a habit of presence, of awareness.
And as we do that, we become less reactive, less identified with the mind's drama, and more aligned with the peace and joy that's our true nature.
It all comes back to his idea that enlightenment isn't something we achieve, but something we realize.
Exactly. And the more we awaken to this truth, the more it shows in our lives, in our actions, our words, our presence.
Like we become beacons of light.
Beautiful. He even suggests that this awakening isn't just personal, but collective. As more individuals wake up to the power of now, it creates a ripple effect, shifting the consciousness of humanity.
Okay, so we've covered the ego, the mind, surrender, the inner body, enlightenment, even transforming negative emotions. But what about fear? Fear is so pervasive, so debilitating. How do we handle it from a place of presence?
That's a great question. Tolle says fear is a product of the mind, a projection of the ego into the future.
So fear isn't based on reality, but on our thoughts about what might happen.
Exactly. And the more we identify with the mind and those future-focused thoughts, the more fear we experience.
So to overcome fear, we bring our attention back to the present moment.
Exactly. He says the only way to overcome fear is to cut through psychological time, to be fully present.
Becoming the observer of our thoughts and emotions, not getting lost in them. Recognizing that we are not our minds, but something deeper.
Right. And the more we cultivate this awareness, the less power fear has. We realize it's just a thought, and it only has the power we give it.
Like shining a light on the darkness and it disappears.
I love that. He even suggests that facing our fears can be transformative.
So we not only liberate ourselves, but also contribute to a collective awakening.
Exactly. He sees this awakening as an evolutionary necessity.
Inspiring vision. But for those still struggling with fear, what practical advice does he offer?
He offers techniques like watching the thinker and acceptance.
So instead of fighting fear, we accept it, allow it to be there without judgment.
Exactly. It doesn't mean being passive or condoning a situation. It means not resisting what is and finding peace in that non-resistance.
Surrendering to the wisdom of life, trusting that things are unfolding as they should.
Beautiful. He also suggests focusing on the inner body.
Right, grounding ourselves in the present moment through those physical sensations instead of getting lost in the anxieties.
Exactly. This helps calm the nervous system and reduce the intensity of fear.
So not just calming the mind, but connecting with a deeper dimension that's beyond fear and duality. But what about when fear is so overwhelming that we can't access that presence or connect with the body? What then?
That's when it's crucial to reach out for support. Tolle recognizes the importance of human connection, especially in difficult times.
It's not about going it alone. It's about reaching out to someone who can hold a space of presence for us, allowing ourselves to be supported.
And even simply talking about our fears can help lessen their power.
Not suppressing them, but bringing them to light, sharing them with someone we trust.
Exactly. And the more we do that, the more we see that fear isn't the enemy. It's a messenger, a signal that something needs attention.
So listening to the message and using it as an opportunity for growth.
He even suggests fear can be a portal to a deeper reality.
Our fears can point us toward the truth, toward realizing we are not just our minds, but something much greater.
Exactly. Facing our fears can be an initiation into a deeper level of consciousness, a level of peace, love, and freedom.
Powerful. We've talked about fear, but what about happiness? What does Tolle say about happiness and how we can experience more of it?
Great question. Tolle says true happiness doesn't come from the outside world. It arises from within, from realizing our true nature.
So it's not about getting that promotion or finding the perfect partner. It's about connecting with the source of joy already within us.
Exactly. He says love, joy, and peace are aspects of our true being, arising from beyond the mind.
Happiness isn't a goal, but a state of being to realize.
He distinguishes between happiness and inner peace. Happiness often depends on external things, while inner peace is independent of conditions.
So even when things are tough, we can still access that inner peace.
Exactly.
Okay, so happiness is conditional, while inner peace is unconditional. How do we cultivate inner peace, especially when things are hard?
He suggests acceptance, allowing things to be as they are without judgment.
So instead of resisting, we surrender and accept and find peace in that.
Exactly. This doesn't mean being passive or condoning injustice. It means not adding to the suffering by resisting what is.
Like letting go of the rope in a tug of war.
He even suggests that acceptance can be a form of spiritual activism.
So by cultivating inner peace, by being present, we contribute to healing the world.
Exactly. And he suggests this is the most effective way to create positive change.
Like becoming beacons of light, radiating peace and love.
Beautiful. He
Yeah.
suggests that this might be our true purpose.
Powerful. It highlights the interconnectedness of all things and the impact of our choices.
It emphasizes aligning with our true purpose, which he describes as enabling the divine purpose of the universe to unfold.
Okay, so we've talked about happiness, inner peace, and acceptance. What about things we typically associate with happiness, like relationships, success, material possessions?
Good question. Tolle says those things can bring temporary pleasure, but not lasting happiness.
So that happiness from external things is fleeting, always subject to change.
Exactly. He even says pursuing happiness in the outside world is a form of addiction, trying to fill a void that can only be filled from within.
Chasing a mirage, trying to find wholeness outside ourselves when it's already our true nature.
Beautifully put. He uses a great analogy, a beggar sitting on a box of gold.
I'd love to hear it.
A beggar sat by a road for over 30 years. One day, a stranger walked by. "Spare some change," the beggar mumbled, holding out his hat. "I have nothing to give you," said the stranger. Then he asked, "What are you sitting on?" "Nothing," replied the beggar, "just an old box." "Ever looked inside?" the stranger asked. "No." "What's the point? There's nothing in there." "Have a look inside," insisted the stranger. The beggar opened the lid and was astonished to find the box was filled with gold.
Wow, that's powerful. We often overlook the treasure that's right in front of us.
And that treasure is not something we find or achieve, but something we realize through the power of now.
Okay, so happiness, inner peace, the fleeting nature of external happiness. What about relationships? They're so important. A source of both joy and pain. What does Tolle say about creating fulfilling ones?
He says the key is to first cultivate a strong relationship with ourselves.
Loving ourselves before we can love another.
Exactly. We can't use relationships to fill a void within ourselves.
If we try to do that, we're setting ourselves up for disappointment.
Exactly. He suggests that bringing unresolved issues into a relationship creates conflict and drama.
So we need to do our own inner work first.
Exactly. He even suggests that the quality of our relationships reflects our own level of consciousness.
So to create loving relationships, we need to cultivate love and harmony within ourselves.
Exactly. He suggests this is also key to attracting the right partner.
We become magnets for the kind of love we cultivate within.
Beautiful. He even suggests that attracting the right partner can be effortless when we're aligned with our true nature.
Not about searching for love, but removing the inner obstacles that block it.
Exactly. Those obstacles are often our own fears, insecurities, and limiting beliefs.
Okay, so inner work, healing, self-love, and removing barriers. But what about the practical side of relationships? How do we handle conflict, communication, and the ups and downs?
Tolle emphasizes presence, awareness, and communication. He says one of the most important things is simply being present with our partner.
So not trying to fix them, but just being present, accepting them as they are, listening with an open heart.
Exactly. And that presence creates a space for love and understanding. He also emphasizes awareness, being mindful of our own thoughts and behaviors, as well as our partners.
Becoming aware of our patterns and choosing to respond consciously, not react unconsciously.
Exactly. That creates space for understanding and compassion. He also emphasizes communication, being honest and open about our needs and feelings.
Creating a safe space to share our hearts and minds without fear of judgment.
Exactly. And this communication isn't just about sharing, but about truly listening, hearing what our partner is saying, both verbally and nonverbally.
Going beyond the words to the energy and emotions behind them.
Exactly. And that kind of deep listening requires us to quiet our own minds and be present.
Creating a space of pure presence for true connection to flourish.
And this kind of connection is the foundation for what he calls enlightened relationships.
Okay, tell me more about enlightened relationships. What do they look like? Are they even possible?
Well, Tolle suggests they have a few key elements. First, both partners are fully present, aware, and conscious. They're not looking to the relationship to complete them because they're already complete within themselves.
Two whole beings coming together to share their love and their journey.
Exactly. And that creates a dynamic that's very different from traditional relationships, which are often based on neediness and dependency.
Moving from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset.
That's it. And this shift in consciousness can be a catalyst for personal and spiritual growth for both individuals and the relationship.
So it's not just about romantic bliss. It's about supporting each other's evolution.
He even suggests that these relationships can become a spiritual practice.
Now we're really curious. How can a relationship be a spiritual practice?
By bringing presence, awareness, and compassion to our interactions, we transform everyday moments into opportunities for growth and healing.
So using the challenges and joys of the relationship as a mirror for our own growth.
Exactly. He even says the most challenging relationships can be our greatest teachers.
It's like those difficult moments, the arguments, are showing us where we need to do inner work, where we need to let go of ego and embrace love.
And that's what makes them so transformative. They're not just about romantic love, but about a deeper connection that supports our spiritual awakening.
The more present we are, the more our relationships become a path to enlightenment.
Exactly.
This has been an incredible deep dive. We've only scratched the surface of the power of now.
It's a book you can keep coming back to and find new layers of meaning.
And that speaks to the power of Tolle's message, embracing the present moment, the reality of what is right now.
And in that embrace, in that surrender, we discover peace, joy, and love.
This has been so enriching. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us.
My pleasure.
To our listeners, we encourage you to explore the power of now further. Experiment with these practices. See what happens when you shift your focus from the mind's chatter to the stillness of the present moment.
Remember, the power to transform your life lies within you, right now.
Thank you for joining us. We look forward to exploring more with you in our next episode. Until then, may you find peace, joy, and presence in this very moment.
Welcome back for the final part of our deep dive into the power of now.
I'm ready to wrap up our exploration of these powerful ideas. Where should we go from here?
One thing I keep coming back to is Tolle's idea about space within relationships. It's not just about merging, becoming one, but honoring that space between.
Interesting. We often think true love means constant togetherness.
Yeah, and Tolle says that's actually the ego sneaking in. The ego is all about control, defining itself through external things, and that includes relationships.
So letting go of that ego, that need to control, could actually feel threatening to a relationship.
That's right. The fear can manifest as possessiveness, jealousy, even trying to manipulate our partner. It's like the ego saying, if I lose you, I lose myself.
That makes sense given how much emphasis we put on romantic relationships as the ultimate source of happiness.
Exactly. And that's why having a strong sense of self, feeling whole within ourselves, is so important before entering into an intimate relationship.
Because if we're already whole, we're not looking to our partner to fill a void.
Right. And that allows us to build a relationship on love and mutual respect, not neediness or control.
I like that shift in perspective.
Yeah.
Moving from a transactional view of relationships to a transformational one.
Why?
Coming together as whole beings to share love and support each other's growth.
Beautiful. And that's what Tolle sees as the foundation for enlightened relationships. Relationships that go beyond the ego's need for control.
Okay, more about these enlightened relationships, please. What do they actually look like? Is that even realistic in the real world?
Well, Tolle outlines a few key elements. Both partners are fully present and aware, not looking to the relationship to complete them because they're already complete within themselves.
Two enlightened individuals coming together to share love and their journey.
Exactly. It creates a different dynamic than those traditional relationships often based on neediness and dependency.
From scarcity to abundance.
Exactly. And this shift in consciousness can be a catalyst for personal growth, both individually and for the relationship itself.
So it's not just about romance, but about supporting each other's evolution.
He even says relationships can become a spiritual practice, a path to awakening.
Now that's intriguing. How can a relationship be a spiritual practice?
By bringing presence, awareness, and compassion to how we interact, we transform everyday moments into chances for growth and healing.
Not avoiding conflict, but using the ups and downs as a mirror for our own growth.
Right. He even says the most challenging relationships can be our greatest teachers.
It's like those tough moments, the arguments, they highlight areas where we need more inner work.
And that's what makes him so transformative. It's not just romantic love, but a deeper connection supporting spiritual awakening.
The more present we are, the more those relationships can guide us toward enlightenment.
Exactly.
This has been incredible. We've only scratched the surface of the power of now.
It's a book you can keep coming back to.
That speaks to the power of his message. It's about embracing the present moment.
And in that embrace, we find the peace and joy we've been seeking.
This has been so enriching. Thank you for your insights.
It was my pleasure.
To our listeners, we encourage you to explore the power of now further. Try these practices. Shift your focus from the mind to the stillness of the present moment.
The power to transform your life is within you in this moment.
Thanks for joining us. Until next time, may you find peace and presence in this very moment.